Namaste and welcome to another episode of the Bharatvaarta podcast. I'm Roshan Karyapa. India has the largest demographic of working men and women in the world, and on this episode, we're going to talk about their career aspirations, how attitudes to work are shifting, and much more. Joining me in this conversation are two very interesting guests. Sudarshan is the managing director of EMA Partners in India. Sudarshan has over 25 years of experience in executive search and is a recognized thought leader who's appeared in leading publications like The Economic Times, Times of India, Bloomberg, and the New York Times. Uh, Hi, Sudarshan. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Roshan. Pleasure to be here.
We also have Abhishek Asthana, who is one of the leading social media influencers in India. You might know him as at Gabbar Singh on Twitter. He's an entrepreneur who runs a couple of startups as well, Ginger Monkey, which is a new age advertising agency, and Hood, which is a pseudonymous social network. Hey, Abhishek, glad to have you back again.
Same here, man. Great to be here.
Awesome. So I guess we have a lot of ground to cover about things that have been in the news as well, and some of the other things that hopefully are a little more unchanging. But let's get started. So Sudarshan, you recruit for some of the largest companies in the world, right? And specifically in India. How have you seen the attitudes to work change among professionals, especially over the last couple of years or so?
Okay, so no, the I don't know if it's the right time to bring this because I call this white collar lethargy, which is the new pandemic as I call it. So there is, at the senior level, I don't see a drop in commitment or sense of ownership and so on. But the intermediary levels and the entry and mid levels in organizations, where that is where you're seeing that a lot of people have actually reset their priorities. Pre-pandemic, for most people, work was at the center of everything what they did. So post the pandemic, I know people have figured out that it's just not work. There are other things, and there are a number of instances where people had to fight for their lives, run for oxygen, and so on and so forth. So the entire outlook towards life and work has changed in the last 2.5 years, and we are still in the hangover phase post the pandemic. And while organizations and leaders or CEOs are actually pushing for people to get back to their normal routines, there is a lot of resistance, sometimes passive and sometimes actually aggressive, active resistance. In fact, that is also one of the reasons why you saw a lot of increased attrition across organizations, especially at the mid and junior levels, and even at the CXO level. In fact, we recently did a study, and we figured that about 40% CEOs have changed in the top 200 to 20 companies in India. So it's companies have also reassessed priorities, right? So there's a big shift which has happened in terms of mindsets. People where they want to work. Earlier, people used to travel 5 days a week and then went back home at weekends and so on. So people are reassessing what they're doing and where they stand in life in general. And career comes as an afterthought. It is more, they put their own lives first and their families, and then comes their career. So that's how things have actually changed.
Yeah, I think certainly I have seen this at least very anecdotally that people's priorities have definitely shifted post COVID, right? Abhishek, as a founder, do you see some of this as well? I mean, you could talk about some of the recent experiences you've had
Yeah.
when talking to people and hiring and so on.
Mine has been an interesting journey actually. When I started my venture, it was born during the pandemic itself. So I had no other choice besides going remote, right? And while I started that, it basically started attracting such people itself. Right? It basically is like product finding the market kind of a situation where I used to get people who wanted to join my company who are in, let's say, Bhopal or Indore. And these are like good professionals who used to work in Delhi or Bombay. Maybe they wanted to take care of their parents. That was one of the reasons. B was the high living cost in Delhi or Bombay. And what used to happen was that they used to save much less amount of money. And all of these guys are, you remember, these guys do send money back home, right? And suddenly their living costs got saved, and they could save much more money. And the thing is, this was unheard of earlier, right? I mean, the people thought that this is what it is. When you're working in a company, you have to show up every day, right? And that's how leaves are counted and everything. Suddenly, people found a way to basically get business done while being remote. And when people saw that the top lines and the bottom lines aren't changing much. In a way, bottom lines improved because of the cost, the overheads that went down. Business leaders or people who have just started business like me thought that this is a good, kind of a model where it's attracting people who are more non-immune. I would say these guys are better off in terms of attrition because these guys are at their homes, and while I provide that kind of a scenario where you don't have to come to office, and so I have a moat here. Other people would want to come, make them come to office, and I saw a lot of people who came to me later half when the pandemic lockdown got lifted, were people who were called back to Bombay and Delhi while they were staying in, let's say, Bhopal or Indore or a Patna. These are the guys who didn't want to go back, and then they were looking at opportunities where they could work still remotely and do good work. And that's where I realized that this is a good mode. I'll tell you, in the last 3 years, my attrition has been zero. The point is that I have around 27 employees, and the thing is that most of these guys, two of them went for higher studies, but I won't count it as attrition. But nobody switched companies. So that's been a good kind of proof of the concept, basically, that this works. Yeah.
Yeah, I've certainly seen startups, especially, use remote as a mode, right? I mean, and yeah, a fair number of folks come to mind in that sense, right? Zapier, for example, was completely remote. A few others as well. Right. So, Sudarshan, how do you see work from home from your perspective? I think it's clearly the biggest shift that's happened over the couple of years. And although, we've made it back to offices somewhat reluctantly, right? It's been a pretty lukewarm response because I think even corporates are having a hard time trying to force people back to office. Do you think that work from office is a redundant trend now post COVID?
See, yeah, you used a word you called it force, because now nothing can be forced on anyone. So, which is the biggest challenge, because look, people can, you can coax people back to work, and now they want to see why should, the advantages of coming back to work. So they need to realize that. So it is and again, it's very industry. I mean, as Abhishek said, it's from his sort of an industry, it has been quite not very difficult for people to work remotely, or even in our business, it's not difficult for people to actually be very effective on a remote basis. But ultimately, there are, of course, companies manufacturing. You need people on the shop floor, right? You can't work remotely. So different companies are facing different challenges. So, but what is happening when you talk to a number of these senior leaders? Everybody, when they're working on a remote basis in some of these industries, they're all on maintenance mode, or they're operating on best effort basis. So whether we are getting that 100% ownership in terms of what they do, the whether collaboration is happening in the way it should be happening. And second, I think we spoke about it in the past, is that new idea generation. You can't actually schedule new idea generation on a Zoom call. Sometimes ideas happen over a cup of tea, or and so on. So those informal conversations, and that is what the leaders are missing, because sometimes ideas spring out of nonsensical conversations, new ideas, and here everything gets structured. And in fact, a lot of people who had were facing the brunt of work from home didn't have working hours. People ended up doing Zoom calls at 10 in the evening, and 11 p.m. and so on and so forth. So it was actually blurring your work and your life. So there are a lot of people who want to come to office because they want to actually draw a line between work and their rest of their lives. So in a sense, so there are. I mean, going back to your question, I think there are arguments for both sides of the spectrum.
So just to add, basically, so I was about to come to that as well. So the other startup I have is completely in office, and that was from day one because it's a product, right? As Darshan rightly said, that ideation can't happen on a scheduled call, right?
Hmm.
It's basically you build on ideas of each other, right? And that's how things happen. And we made it a point in the other startup where basically that everybody has to be in office and there'll be no remote roles because we realize this is something which is new, and you need to innovate to basically get ahead of the market, because it's not that this is the product we are trying to build is something very new, right? And so we need to do things rightly, do things more innovatively to basically get that edge, right? I go to that office every day. So, and that has been the case for the last 9 months, maybe December, since January when the office opened. I guess Feb. I guess since I haven't missed office. So one side is completely remote because the industry, I mean, is like that, right? And the other business basically where you need people to show up to things, make things happen.
Yeah, I guess it's a very yaw mileage may vary kind of a situation, right? And also, I think there are certain things that work better from work from home, and certain things from work from office. But I certainly feel that you can't build from an arm's distance, which is what remote does oftentimes, right? We can argue in terms of productivity, whether people have more time to be productive now that they're siloed, or I mean, but that also comes at a drawback of them being less collaborative as well, right? So what do you value more, and when do you value these things more? And then think about learning via osmosis, right? Sudarshan, you mentioned all the nonsensical conversations, right? The water cooler chat as such that happens, and especially when you're onboarding new folks. I think there is just so much more that new folks need to understand about a company, about a role, that goes way beyond all the documentation, right? I mean, you can't just read a few slides and suddenly feel like you're part of a company, right? You have to sort of get immersed in that culture, and that's really hard. But at the same time, I think, yeah, managers and leaders are really struggling at this point of time to design a purpose for the office, right? I mean, design a actual purpose for why someone should actually make it to the office. And that's a challenge, because this is something that we took for granted, right? I mean, I think at least all of us belong to that generation where, well, we never question these things, right? I mean, forget about 5 days. I mean, we've probably done 6 days in the office, right? And very, very formal work environments as well. It's interesting. So I have a question in terms of how startups are looking at this versus corporates. Sudarshan, what do you see as corporates attitude? I mean, like when you look at some of the larger MNCs, or larger Indian companies, right? How are they viewing work from home versus work from office, and how is it changing?
If you ask any CEO or a founder and ask them to touch their heart and say, if they want their people to go back to their offices, they will say yes. There is also, but at the same time, you have to appear that you are in tune with the times, and you need to sort of show that flexibility to say that, look, we welcome all sorts of you can work from anywhere and so on and so forth. So people do make these statements, but end of the day, the founders or the CEOs or the business owners want people back in their offices, because that is when they really see the it's not about when you see empty offices. Actually, it
Mm.
hurts people who have invested and put up a lot of real estate at that one level. It's psychologically very damaging for them. While
Yeah.
business may be happening at the back end, but it doesn't sit well with a lot of founders. This is my personal experience. I've seen founders going through this challenge, right? Invariably, maybe Abhishek can talk about it. The founders are the only ones who are sitting in the office at times, and you only stare at empty seats in front of you. So it's a bit of a challenge. And today's generation, I mean, you spoke about it, how to get work done without being harsh, with them, because there's no word called force. You have to motivate them, you have to get them to feel a sense of ownership, and you have to draw them to the workplace. And that's the biggest challenge faced, which is today companies are facing. And then there is, be it old economy, new economy, there's no difference. In fact, a lot of this new economy, new age founders are the ones who went to office every day, even during the pandemic.
Yeah.
They may sitting in front of empty desks and so on, but they're the ones who did their work very hard. And today, going back to some of the founders that made statements that you need to work for 18 hours and so on. It's just a manner of speaking. Is obviously saying that, guys, get skin in the game, work hard, and this is the time for you to work hard, is what he said. But again, look, as I said, I think there are a number of people, for out of every 100 people, there are only 4 or 5 you will find that who bring that, have that sense of commitment and ownership, and those are the ones who really do well in their careers. And then
Yeah.
in any, I mean, you don't get no, every company has only one CEO, right? So the others will be there. They will be passengers in any business, any industry, any country. I mean, in a large mass of people.
Yeah, we'll talk about that comment specifically later in the conversation. But yeah, I mean, I've seen this as well. I mean, today there were somebody tweeted that a particular founder in Bangalore used a tractor to get to work because of the area was flooded and everything, right? So yeah, and where I work, we got our brand new office and everything in November of 2019. So you can imagine about 3 months or 4 months of work from office, and then this happened, right? So Abhishek, you spoke about a very interesting thing, right? Which is that using remote as an advantage, right? I mean, you've been able to hire people, perhaps top tier people who would rather work for you because you're offering this remote as an option, right? And also the fact that they're fairly spread out, right? I mean, they're in Indore, Patna, elsewhere as well. So, what would your advice be for folks who are actually evaluating remote as an option, in terms of their office, and what are some preconditions to that? What are some best practices in your opinion?
See, I usually avoid advising because what happens is that everybody's environment variables are different. What works for me might not work for someone else, right? And if suppose I advise something and it doesn't work out for someone else, then my entire experience gets invalidated, right? So rather, I would rather share my experiences and let viewers or audiences basically decipher their own learnings. So what I also realized was that for a small setup like us, right? I mean, suddenly you're trying to attract talent from, let's say, top companies. One, this moat is there, but then it also comes with an rider as well. So what happens is that suddenly the moment you have spread out, you're in Bhopal, you're in Indore, Patna. If suppose someday I want to I suddenly have this brainwave, then these things are not working out. I need people in the office. It won't happen then. I might lose out people. So then what happens? It becomes like an albatross around your neck. Suddenly, because of business continuity, will say that no, no, let's keep it that way. Because the moment I tell someone in Bhopal or let's say Bombay to come to Delhi and to be in an office, I might lose out on that talent. And do I have a pipeline to basically, fulfill that or fill that gap? I might not have that because I'm a small setup, right? And this adventure can be taken by bigger corporates who have, big enough pipelines to fill talent. But for a small setup, it becomes a difficult scenario. Thankfully, what we have done is we have lived through this, and because we were born into this, we evolution basically, and we developed those organs to survive. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult for the people, right? So similarly, as you said, rightly said, that the founders want to be in control. They want to be in office, and what I've seen with my co-founders as well, who never had this work from home kind of a or hybrid kind of a model in their careers. They are pretty much very adamant of this fact that people should be in office, and I respect that as well. I mean, I run both kind of setups, so I can see where people are coming from, and I've seen myself that suddenly, productivity increases and things happen much faster. And legacy businesses like advertising can survive, but new age businesses need people in the office.
No, I think the other challenge is having to program everything, right? I mean, if you are, in a work from home setup, you pretty much have to program every damn thing. And
Yeah.
that's just a very tedious task. I think, honestly, the amount of time and effort required for that, right? I mean, I am not sure that, all of us can carve out that amount of time and effort to make sure that every last mile is programmed, right? And, we know one thing, that no matter, how you design these things, there are always loopholes and ways around these things, right? um, Sudarshan, let's look at the job market. So it's been very topsy turvy over the last couple of years. First we had the nervousness because of COVID, and then 2021 was, what can you say, right? I mean, unbridled optimism, and then we're sort of seeing a return to the median now. How do you see the job market in 2022? What are some of the new realities that recruiters are kind of adjusting to?
See, 21, 22 was there's a lot of pent up demand, and in fact, companies hired. I mean, the massive hiring which happened across the board. It's just not the digital or tech. So, on even the traditional industries also hired quite a bit. And 22, 23, right now we're in 22, 23. So things are moderated a bit. And today, I have not seen a single uh, job at the senior level where they said remote working is an option. It's just not in the scope of definition, because people are, job locations are being specified, be it Mumbai, Bangalore, Gurgaon, whatever it is. People have no choice, and it has to be that way in this at the senior level, because if people have to really make or people have to make real impact in the organization, they have to work where the team is, rest of the team is. So, but at the same time, what has happened to organizations and mindsets is that there is a lot of flexibility, at least. You're not really waiting, by the clock and saying, okay, 9:01, you're marked half day absent. So that behavior is gone to a large extent in very large organizations. But I can tell you for sure that some very small organizations, which will not get counted as great employers or an employer of any this thing, their people still work for a number of years. They still have those old rules where you have a CCTV camera which is focused on your desk to see what time you come in and what time you're gone. So all of them thrive, right? Only a small percentage are vocal in these sort of the cross section of employees. But going back, I think to your question, market is I think people CXOs. I mean, if you look at specific skill sets, are pretty much in demand. Technology is now all pervasive across industries. You can take any industry, be it manufacturing, be it tech and digital. So tech is now native in every business. So digital officers or technology officers, it is now part for the course. So all organizations are looking to be digitally savvy. They're looking at putting up, even conventional businesses which are in, cement and steel. They all have a digital front, digital storefronts and so on and so forth. So that is all pervasive. And there is, and at the same time, don't forget that India is also building huge capacities in the core sector, be it cement, steel, and steel, copper, wherever you're talking. I mean, there are additional capacities being set up and so on. So there are large global scale capacities which are operating, and finding people for those sectors is a big challenge. People who can operate at that scale, global scale businesses, and so you will see. And I'm still, I mean, the last 10 years I've been saying that we hope to see more, Indian companies which don't have, an office which is just manned by Indians. You will see more multicultural organizations, which you will see Indian companies building in the future, because that is going to happen. Because India alone can't produce. At the same time, you look at the dichotomy. Indians are also now global CEOs in many companies. I mean, just you saw Starbucks, I mean Google. So it's likewise. We'd also like to see Indian companies having expatriate CEOs, which is we've seen that happen in the case of Wipro. You will see more organizations doing that. Air India has an expatriate CEO in any case. So you will see more and more companies looking at multicultural talent going forward.
What do you make of salaries? Have they gone up, down, sideways, etc.? Because I mean, especially in the tech industry, I think we saw some crazy sort of offers, right? I mean, last year, I mean, people were, forget about 30% or 40%, and people were planning to double salaries and so on. Somewhere, I mean, they were kind of benchmarking what someone got internationally and so on. So has that sort of tempered off, or do you think that that's still continuing?
One thing which never goes down is salaries. The percentage of increase will depend on the year, but it never goes down. People may lose jobs. Okay, that's a different question. But salaries going down is, I've not seen that happen in the last 20 years. We've always seen good times, bad times, salaries continue to keep going up, and there is no respite. I mean, if you look at cost of manpower as a line item in the balance sheet for any large company or any business, for instance, or people, even small businesses, it is going up all the time. So it's not going to come down. But people may rationalize and cut people, staff, and so on and so forth. That will happen from time to time. You let go, but nobody. There is no salary cut happening anywhere, or it doesn't go down. Or even when people change, if they are jobless, and if they are in a situation where they are between careers and so on and so forth, even then, they people actually negotiate hard. In fact, people don't want to take a reduction in compensation unless they are pushed to the extreme, because if they don't have a choice, otherwise salaries don't go down.
So Abhishek, let's talk about that post by Shantanu Deshpande, right, of Bombay Shaving Company. Sudarshan referenced this a while back as well. Basically, I think what he said, I don't have the post in front of me, but the gist of it was that, hey, during the early years of your career, young folks should bias themselves to work, put in 18 hours if required consistently, right? And there was a huge backlash, and there was a discussion on work-life balance and so on and so forth. Um, we spoke about the fact that remote has further blurred boundaries and so on. I would love for your take on this.
Very very interesting, because I was just having this conversation with my co-founder that so what happens usually is that uh, businesses are not run by a textbook, right? And he said in jest, of course, 18 hours is not. He doesn't didn't mean those 18 hours. Actually, he actually mentioned in the post itself. He said it just means that you need to put in hard work in during the initial years, and I don't think so. Anybody can deny that. Anybody, I know that there are talks about work-life balance and this and that, and everything is there, of course. But I guess it's also a function of your ambition. I mean, suppose some people may aim much higher. They want to become CEO. They want to become, let's say, startup founders of unicorns. So, if suppose your ambition is really high, then of course you need to work hard. And what happens in India is by default we assume that everybody aims for that role, right? In the US, what will happen is I have seen people who've been a business analyst all their lives. They didn't want a promotion. They were pretty happy because the salaries were high anyway. I mean, in that whatever the money they were making, they could easily sustain themselves, sustain their family as well. So in India, what happens is that every 18 months you need a promotion, but that same rat race is not there in the US in the West, right? So I guess it's a function of ambition, and anyone who is a successful person assumes that everybody will be ambitious enough, right? But that's a change that is happening right now. I mean, good, bad, I don't know. Maybe if suppose someone comes and tells me that I don't want to become the CEO. I'm pretty happy doing a, let's say, a desk job all my life, and if it basically ensures that I take care of my parents, my family, I have responsibilities. Maybe you might think that between the age of 22 to 28 I don't have any responsibilities, but that might not be true in my case. Maybe I have an ailing parent, maybe I have a single parent I'm taking charge of, or there's a pet I'm taking care of. So the point is that sometimes what happens is people who have come from the 90s, right, who have the only way to success was IDJ or AIMS basically, and working hard there and getting a good rank and getting a good college. So the pathway to success was pretty much the same, right? So we assume that everybody would be wanting to go on that path, right? So that's an assumption sometimes founders make, because initially my gag reflex was very same, that okay, this is bullshit. I mean, of course he didn't mean those 18 hours and everybody needs to work hard. But when I actually shared this tweet and talked to a few of my colleagues as well, then I realized that maybe we are moving closer to the West right now, right? Now, because most of these guys are second generation, most of the needs are taken care of. Let's say accommodation, right? Let's say you're staying in Bombay, and your parents worked hard, got a house, and now you have that house for granted. And you know how, if suppose you have an accommodation in Bombay, I mean, about 50-60% of your liabilities are taken care of. So imagine these guys are those guys who are like, okay, I don't want to become a CEO. I'm okay being a business analyst. But from if you ask me, I would assume that everybody would want to become the top person in any company. And if you want to be that, you have to work hard. And there's no two ways about it.
No, no, I think it's a very valid point. I mean, because everybody need not become a CEO. I mean,
Yeah.
you need also people down the line. So, and then there are people with different sort of ambitions or different priorities in life. So it's perfectly all right.
Yeah. And I think we are also seeing the beginnings of some of the middle class priority sort of show itself, middle class prosperity show itself, right? I mean, which is that, hey, I mean, we're having more and more people who don't have to work, right? I mean, it's not like, somebody from the village who's moved to the city and they have to support their parents and, maybe a couple of brothers and sisters or something of that sort. And they don't have a home here and so on, right? So you're starting to see that generation of people enter the workforce more and more. So for whom, yeah, I mean, this work is not the end all be all. Gainful employment is not the number one priority in life. Yes, I mean, they want to be employed because they want to be working. They want to, afford some of the comforts of life and so on. But that's not the center around which a lot of things revolve. And it's a concept that people of our generation, I don't know, I mean, we cannot fathom that, right? I mean, it's difficult for us to accept it because of such a big shift, right? And there's this concept of work life integration that I hear of right now, which is that, hey, I mean, forget about balance, right? I mean, it's in this world, especially when you're connected 24/7, there's no point of trying to carve out 8 hours for something and another 4 hours for something and whatever else, right? During the remaining time, it's about being available selectively throughout, right? I mean, whenever you need to. That also is sort of like a prevailing thought that I see, right? Work life integration. Um, Sudarshan, recently there was another comment as well. The Wipro chairman Rishad Premji said that moonlighting by employees is cheating, and I'm quoting him on this. Right? Is this the new reality in terms of people having multiple jobs? And what do you think about moonlighting specifically? Right? Because I actually was. Even though I knew that it was prevalent, I mean, I was a little surprised by the couple of things that I saw. Right, I mean, survey by Kotak Institutional Equities of 400 people, 400 employees in ITES, revealed that 65% of respondents said that they were either engaged in part-time opportunities during work from home or knew a colleague who was, right. um, I mean, it's when that 65% is not all 65% engaged in work from home I mean, in another gig, but that's still a reasonably significant percentage, right? So what do you make of it? You think
So
moonlighting should be embraced, or it's a reality?
it is not. It is actually, if you look at our employment contracts, it actually prevents you from working anywhere else for anything which is a monetary compensation for any, you can't take any other responsibility or any other position outside the company, right? So that is a contract which people sign with companies. So one is, it's a breach of contract. And second, I think what he was alluding to when he said cheating, that is why he said it is cheating, because that's not the contract what you sign with the company, because you're not a freelancer. So, so that is one. And second, the is also alluding to the fact that when you're employed, when you sign the contract, the employer would expect 100% no, the of your time, whatever time you're devoting for the organization. And there's also the other unsaid things, which is your sense of ownership, sense of commitment to the job you're doing, and so on. Moonlighting by itself is very, as a, I mean, it became popular during this the pandemic, because people were doing, and there's a lot of freelancers sprung up, and gig became a big thing. Everyone said, "I'm what is your new gig?" is what people would ask. So that itself gives a very temporary sort of a status to what you're doing, right? And it is not permanent. So I would also think on the lines of what Rishad said, that moonlighting is not what you signed up for. And if it is what you signed up for, that you're committed to your employment contract, then you better not do this moonlighting bit. And if you want to really do it, you then you should not have a full-time job, or you don't sign the contract.
Abhishek, would you be fine with your employees moonlighting?
See, I agree with Sudarshan there. See, the thing is, when you say cheating, it's not cheating, it's the breach of contract, basically. Suppose I have an employment contract with you and you're willing to sign that, and I mean, basically, there's a clause there which prevents you from doing any other work besides my work. Then, and if you're doing that, then if you're breaching the contract, and that means it's cheating. So, and see, the thing is that, okay, imagine what will happen is that if suppose there is a need for it, if more and more employees are asking for it, the free market will take care of it. The contracts will get amended automatically. Of course, imagine if suppose your employment contract is binding on people, and people are not liking that clause in their contract, people won't sign it. And as business owners, you would be forced to amend the contract, so that at the end of the day, you want talent to come to your place for business continuity. So I think the free market will take care of it. I'm a big believer in free markets, right? If there is enough demand for something, the markets will automatically change it, and the business owners will change the thing, and it will become a norm. Until there is not enough demand for it, the existing contracts will be applicable, and if you breach that, it's cheating.
Roshan, is that people also have to think that they look at their career as long term. You want to work for 25 years, 30 years, and so on. So, what we're talking is real short term or shortcuts to make more money. I mean, people have, if they view it with the lens of a career, a longer term career, be it with Wipro or any other company where you want to work. So, then does it's not, moonlighting is not the way to go about it. So, that's the
No, I kind of agree with both of you there, that I think, if you've signed a particular contract that sort of forbids this, right, then the essence of it has to be honored, right? I mean, you have to do that at a very basic level, right? And also, I think here we need to draw a distinction between, let's say, passion projects, right, and moonlighting, which is going out and getting another job altogether, which is what a lot of the folks are doing, right? I somehow think that it's not in the right spirit to have benefits like insurance and whatnot, from a company, and then get the same deal elsewhere as well, right? And I do believe, like Abhishek mentioned, I think the contracts will also will have to evolve, right? And employers also will have to really think about it, that hey, do I really need this person for 40 hours a week, right? I mean, or can I make do with lesser, right? And again, employees as well will have to think about it, right? I mean, do I really want to commit full time to this position, or do you think that I should be able to perhaps negotiate for something less than that? I think, yeah, I mean, it's a reality that I think going further, this gig work, right, or partial work, or multiple different companies, engaging with multiple different companies will become a little more prevalent, if not the norm, right? Yeah. So, but Sudarshan, do you think all of this is as a result of that mega bull run that we saw in 2021, or do you think that some of these attitudes will continue to prevail, or do you see that correcting sometime in the slowdown that we're in right now?
I think it will get corrected because we often, I mean, that was a necessity. People had to go remote and people had to do all those things. And as time goes by, I think you will see some level of normalcy returning. But at the same time, look, I mean, today people want flexibility, right? Which is not given. I mean, it had to be earned. Then flexibility is always available. It had to be earned. It will still be like that, but the attitude to work has changed. I mean, and the as more, I think you alluded to that, right? The middle class thing, as more and more you will see the prosperity kicking in at all levels. The future generations will be more secure with work or without work. So it's also sense of security what you have, and what is the real dire. Do you have a dire need to have a job? If you don't have, then you will make your own decisions, right? And you will choose what works best for you. You will survive without a job. It is okay. It doesn't matter. So because you are economically secure, the earlier generations have done that for you, and that is what is reflecting today in attitudes at the workplace. So especially the current generation.
Right. Abhishek, on that related note, right? I mean, one thing is, we can all agree that the options for employment have, increased manifold, right? I mean, for especially for folks just out of college right now. I remember graduating from, engineering during 2008, global financial crisis, right? I mean, it was such a crazy time, right? I mean, found the first job that I could get, and perhaps stayed there for 3 or 4 years, right? These are very different circumstances right now. I mean, people tend to look at jobs a little more transactionally, and a little more. Actually, I wouldn't say transactionally. I mean, they're really trying to evaluate, right? I mean, today I had three interviews, and much as I felt like I was evaluating the candidate, I felt that the candidate also was evaluating us, right? And which is fair. I think that's perhaps sign of the times. What can founders, employers do to attract and retain good talent?
See, with talent, it's always 20% being chased by 80%. Basically, like I mean, there are enough and more graduates out there, but employable graduates, people who have the necessary skill sets as well as the diligence, are very few basically, and everybody is chasing them, and that's why there's a lot of good people basically who basically come out. I mean, on tops on every other metric, every other test they go through for with different employers. These guys are chased by multiple people, and of course, these guys will evaluate them, right? I mean, they are in charge and in power, and that's what I also see. I mean, it's not that the hit rate is abysmal. I mean, the kind of offers we give out to people, and the number of people who accept it, and actually make it so that there's a whole layer basically. It's the employer basically who is praying that the employee joins on the day when it was mentioned. So it's a big headache actually. So instead of the employees waiting with the offer letter like in the days when we worked, and now it's like the employers waiting for the employees to join on the date of joining. So it's become difficult. I mean, my only thing is that the supply of talent needs to increase. Of course, I mean, I don't think so. We are that big an economy enough. I mean, it's especially that to have this kind of shortage. We have the demographic dividend we talk about, and if suppose there are enough and more employable people out there, all of our needs will be met. But the issue is that there are very few skilled as well as diligent people out there, and this supply crunch is going to be there, and that's what drives up salaries. That's what drives up. I mean, employment contracts. That's what leads to these situations like moonlighting, where you have to accept it. I mean, even if you have mandated in a contract that you can't moonlight, and even if you found an employee moonlighting, you can't do much about it, right? I mean, because those 35 hours or 40 hours he's giving to you are valuable enough for business continuity. So these are some of the things which basically founders go through, and not all businesses can be run as per the textbook, right? And I'll tell you what is happening these days is more and more businessmen basically what they're doing is they are letting these secrets out in public domain, and which is a bit uncomfortable for people to digest, right? And that's how businesses are run, basically, right? That's how businesses are run, through hacks. The people run businesses through various points. They'll because I mean the competition is immense. If suppose everybody has read a textbook and come to run a business, then they'll make the same mistakes. They'll do the same things. You need to evolve. You need to do something different to basically attract talent, and people innovate all the time. So the thing is
Yeah.
now some of those innovations might not be politically correct and might not be digestible for the general public. And when these employers usually try to share those real learnings, the social media, the masses bite back and basically prevent them from actually sharing those secrets. And what will happen is every other employer and founder will talk all the goody things, and there'll be fewer people, there'll be a lot of people who will be misled that this is how companies are run, and when they actually take that plunge, are surprised and shocked. So it's very difficult actually. So I think we should encourage discussion and dialogue, and we should not shame people and shut up people just cause they were politically incorrect. And that's a mindset we need to come out from. And I find it really difficult and disgraceful that someone was shut down. Someone had to shut down their LinkedIn page just cause their views were divergent from your views, and this won't help the larger cause.
I think one thing that I have noticed over the last couple of years on a related note is that the difference between the best and the rest has just increased, like, order of magnitude, right? And that's why, I mean, you're seeing a greater leverage with the folks who are really good. They're able to negotiate for these things, or in some cases, just do what they want, right? Sudarshan, same question to you. What do you see some of the larger corporates do to attract and retain good quality talent in this market?
I think it's a time tested formula is to provide people opportunities to grow professionally and personally, and large companies which in the past were good employers, many of them continue to be so. I'm not taking names of companies, then it's a long list, and so people have always offered them opportunities ahead of the curve, recognized good talent. They've also sort of given them growth opportunities, exposure to newer geographies, newer markets. So to create well-rounded 360-degree managers, at what I would call. So those companies they continue to do well in the talent market. And the good news for people is that those are not the only opportunities now today, because the opportunity spectrum has vastly increased for talent. So you're not earlier. I mean, say 25 years ago or 20 years ago, you had a standard formula. You pass out of an IIT, IIM, just get into a foreign bank, or then you get into an FMCG company. I mean, this is a pretty much standard formula. You had day zero, day one, and so on and so forth. So today it is, you need not restrict yourselves to those sort of opportunities, right? You can get into a e-commerce company, digital first businesses. There are a number of opportunities for people, and these the talent pecking order has also changed. And back in the day, multinationals were the most attractive employers. So if you look today, it doesn't matter. Today, Indian companies, large businesses are extremely good employers, and they are also attracting talent. And they're competing. And multinationals actually are not there in many businesses. If you look at banking, for instance, it's all the large Indian banks which are. If you look at retail banking, it is the Indian banks which are there at the top, right? If you look, there are no multinational banks are there. You look at any of our other core sector if you look at our industries, it's all the Indian businesses. So today, Indian companies are doing a fantastic job in terms of being a good magnet for talent. And second, I think people are also not wedded to these jobs as well. That's on the flip side. People are also
Mm.
open to opportunities. Earlier, it was like, a job was almost closer to marriages. You pick up your first job, you try and stay there forever. So today, people are open to sort of, change, and they're looking for opportunities outside. And, so that
It's the Tinder generation, basically, or it's the Hinge generation, I should say.
I'm not labeling it, but I'm just saying it's also that opportunity spectrum has vastly increased, and
Yeah,
people
that's true.
opportunities are knocking at the doors of people. And earlier, otherwise people would think twice before leaving a large FMCG company or a bank and so on. They will, whether they like the job or not, they sort of continue with the job for, because that is the perception was that you don't leave these jobs. It is like, we have this term, remember, life may settle ho gaya. So that concept of settling down in life, that the entire paradigm has shifted. Now there is no settling in. It's actually growing, exploring, and doing different things. I mean, that's how it has changed.
All right, to end the podcast, we'll end with some career advice, right? Both of you have spent 15, 20, 25 years, in the industry. What are some things that you guys have picked up that have really helped you, stood you in good stead, over the years? So, Abhishek, we'll start with you. If you were a young professional, what are some things that you would do now, right? Knowing from experience, all the things that what are some two or three things that you would do?
I think as a young professional now, I have more insights about being an employer than an employee. So the thing is that, see, for me when I started up, what I realized was that there is no uh, substitute for diligence, basically, right? I'm a big believer that skill can be learned, skill can be bestowed, but not diligence, right? I mean, if you are diligent, everybody appreciates that, and everybody, and all most businesses basically want, during the initial years, the first 2 years, want diligent employees rather than skilled employees. I mean, what I've seen is that they would want, there'll be certain processes and systems, and they would want you to be the cog of the wheel, basically, and run those processes and systems efficiently, right? And that's what I've learned, that initially when you are coming in, put in that effort, and basically uh, your diligence shouldn't be compromised. I mean, it shouldn't happen that you're doing spikes of work, basically. And what happens later in your career, that okay, you might not do all 22 days of hard work. What can happen is, on 3 meetings you perform well, and that covers for the entire month, right? And those 3 spikes will cover for the entire month. But that doesn't happen when you start up. You have to put in effort every 22, every day of that 22 days, and basically make sure that your boss doesn't have to follow up with you. I mean, it's a great thing when people take ownership. I mean, and this is the most cliche term, but I mean, nothing like, and as a boss, as an employer also, when I see people taking ownership and telling me that it will be done, right? I mean, I'll take care of it. There are various complexities, but I won't expose those complexities to you. I'll basically manage it on my own. That shows leadership. That shows that, fine, this person wants, even no matter how small is the job, basically. If suppose someone has taken ownership of something, and done it right, and shown outcomes, that means that person is set for greatness. And I always tell people that, fine, I don't need skilled people. I don't need. I'll teach you skill. Impart that know-how, that knowledge, learning to you. I just want diligence from you. And that's why Shantanu's words also make more sense. That because when he says 18 hours, it's not that 18 hours. He's just, telling you to be diligent in the initial days. Right? Whatever time you are spending, do it. Even if you are spending 4 hours and you told your employer that I'm spending 4 hours, those 4 hours should be of quality, and those 4 hours should be of honest effort, right? And that's where I am a bit old school in that sense, that okay, come work hard, and as an employer, also realize where do you want to work hard as well, right? If suppose you see, what I follow as well is, when I hire someone new, I ask them for their long-term goal. Where do they want to become, let's say 10 years from the down the line? And if I see them working here every day, moving one step closer to that goal, then it works both for both of us, basically. Otherwise, if you are spending time here to prepare for cat maybe, and going on a different direction, then that doesn't work out well, right? I'm not I'm someone who's just gonna be कि आप 2 साल बता लो यहाँ पे I'll bill you with the client and then you can move on because you are a commodity. I'll have someone to make them a leader eventually. If I'm spending some time with you and I'm giving opportunities of ownership, then I'm seeing you lead the company. And I'll tell you, this is the best productivity hack. If you delegate well, I think it is the best hack I have learned is that I can be very, very free. I can have those chats with people. I can have these discussions as well. I can spend time with my daughter as well. Just delegating and trusting people and giving them ownership, right? And hiring well.
Yeah, I mean, he's really covered a lot of ground there. But just one or two things in our industry, we say that before you really become a partner, we ask people to demonstrate partner-like behavior. So that is if that is inculcated, right? If that is very important, the sense of ownership, as what Abhishek mentioned, sense of ownership, good work ethic, and giving your 100% and more to what you do. I think that is, I mean, these are not new things. These are age-old formulas, really speaking, for to succeed in whatever you do. And the second thing I've seen is that not that you need to do a particular job to do well in your life. My belief is whatever you do, if you do it well, actually you get searched out for, because that is what we do as search consultants. It's not necessary that you have to be a finance professional or a marketing professional, whatever, and whichever industry, if you whichever industry you get into or whatever function you do, if you give your 100%, and if there is continuity in what you do, and if you really excel, you will actually get searched out for bigger opportunities. That is what happens. So persisting with one line of a profession or one line of business also is not a bad thing in the long run. Actually, it'll you can provided you enjoy what you're doing. I mean, obviously, it comes with that caveat. But partner like behavior, and it will not come over. You don't want to be. You don't want to wait till the time you're called a partner to demonstrate partner like behavior. It will not happen overnight. So this has to come right from the time you join an organization. That is where you spoke about Abhishek. You spoke about sense of ownership, commitment, and good work ethic. I mean, that will take you far. And it's not an
Absolutely.
advice. It's my own experience. So
Yeah, yeah. Lived experience.
yeah,
Yeah. Kind of vehemently agree with both of you there, right? I think you have to persevere. Your learning and earning tends to compound with time, right? I mean, and you have to find a problem that you're passionate about, and the fact that there are so many different options for young people simply means that you can choose the one that you like, right? I mean, you're not really forced to take up that offer from campus or wherever else. I think people have to be a little more deliberate about the choices that they make, take ownership of that as well, and fail forward, right? I mean, you work in a startup that's solving the problem that you're really passionate about, whatever that is, right? Whether it's Web3 or climate change or hey, e-commerce or whatever else, right? And fail forward, and uh, find a great boss. Maybe work with the founder and make them look good, right? Standard advice. So yeah, I mean,
one
yeah,
last point is that one thing we just today we do see, read about a lot of unicorns, millionaires, founders, and so on. So what we don't see is that the sort of the hard yards they put behind before they reached where they reached. There is no get rich quick scheme which is available, unless we keep buying lottery tickets, and sometimes it works, but otherwise there is no scheme. And it's a hard way there, to sort of reach the top. So that is something which, but today I think those lines are the ambition sort of to earn takes over, and it is not. I keep saying that it is ambition has to be backed by efforts, and in the right direction and hard work. That is what will get you where
yeah.
you want to go.
Like someone said, if you work long enough, then you'll become an overnight success someday, right? So yeah,
True.
thanks so much, Abhishek and Sudarshan, for joining us. This was a fun chat. Perhaps, I mean, we should do a follow-up sometime, right? Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Do rate and review us on all the platforms. We also record a similar episode, Livelihoods for Bharat, with Ramesh Kailasam and Munish Chawla sometime back. Do check it out if you're interested in this trail of thought. Thank you again for joining us. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roshan. Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Bharatvaarta podcast. If you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We started Bharatvaarta to facilitate long form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you wish to offer us feedback, do reach out to us on social media. We are at Bharatvaarta on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You could also get in touch with us on our website www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.